maximize your score for the quantitative reasoning. Here I would recommend that you write down things like calculations, equations, decimals and fractions. You might not have to know the exact value of the calculation, but if you know that it's going to be an odd number, if there's only one odd option there, that is a very quick shortcut to help you eliminate all that stuff without having to do any calculations. Every quantitative reasoning has a few what I call impossible questions, and they are there to slow you down and actually see if you waste time on those. You have to be ruthless with your time. If something is taking too long, I can't get the answer, I'm going to skip, I'm going to flag, and I'm going to move on. Otherwise you will get bogged down on the day with doing too many questions that are taking too long, and you're missing out on the future questions which are going to be simple, easy marks to be gained. Most people do badly in the UCAT because they don't make it through and they run out of time. Here's what you should do with...
I scored 870 on the QR subtest on the UCAT. My name's Emil and I scored in the 99th percentile on the UCAT in 2020, and this video is the third video of my UCAT crash course sponsored by MedEntry. In this video I'll give a quick overview of the subtest, share my general strategy and tips and tricks for answering questions, show you exactly how to use the on-screen calculator, and finally go through some questions myself live on camera. The quantitative reasoning subtest has been updated in 2022, and now instead of 24 minutes to answer questions, you have 25 minutes to answer 36 questions, which gives you approximately 41 seconds.
I get 43 seconds per question.
The questions can come in sets of 4 or they can be standalone, and they tend to be at a 15 to 16-year-old high school level. Some of the really common topics tested in this subtest are distance, speed, time, percentage change, budgeting, and overall this subtest just tests your ability to do quick mathematical calculations in short periods of time. So now that we know what the quantitative reasoning subtest is like, let's get straight onto my general strategy, which first starts with a mindset. This mindset is that you absolutely must skip questions that are too difficult. In almost the entirety of the UCAT, but especially in the quantitative reasoning section, not all of the questions are created equal. For example, one question might ask you to do 2 plus 2, and the other question might ask you to calculate the circumference of the U on the UCAT logo. Even though one of these questions is obviously...
That's actually pretty funny. I don't like it. Why am I not logged in?
Far harder than the other. In the UCAT, they're both going to be worth the same amount of marks because they'll both be multiple choice questions with one correct answer. As a result, you have to be really careful to skip and flag those questions that might be tricking you into wasting too much time to doing them and just moving on and doing some other questions instead. Sticking to that mindset, the first step I take when answering QR questions is to read through the stimulus really briefly. If it looks too hard and the chart or table looks really complicated, has a lot of columns or rows, often I'll just skip the question and tell myself to come back to it later. If I decide to do a question, the next part of my general strategy is to read the stimulus really carefully. What I mean by this is you should just read the background information to any charts or tables that you get given in the scenario, but try not to get sucked into all the data in the charts and tables because that might end up causing you to waste a lot of time. Here, what I try to pick up on are like those really important qualifying bits of information that they might give you at the start or end of a question that are designed to make you get an answer wrong if you didn't read it very carefully. With tables and charts, I never like to look at any of the numbers inside the table, but I usually like to look at the axes or the labels of the rows or columns. The next step in my general strategy is to read the question and understand what it's asking. When you're doing QR questions, you need to be able to look at the question and quickly understand what calculations you need to do to get to the answer at the end of the day. This step helps you to stop making a lot of those silly errors that happen when you don't read the question properly, and trust me, that's happened to me plenty as well, and it helps you save time because you know exactly what data you're looking for from the tables and charts to get your answer. The next step is to find the data you need to do the calculations and to use the calculator enough to do those questions. It's important to find a balance with using the calculator enough, but not too much, so that you actually use it as quickly and efficiently as possible, but you're not using it too much and wasting time, and you're also not using it too little and possibly making silly mistakes by doing mental maths. After following the step-by-step process, hopefully you'll have your answer, so just pick it and move on. Moving on to the tips and tricks I have for the QR subtest, my first tip is to try and reduce your fear of maths as much as possible. A lot of people come into the QR subtest with the mindset that they suck at maths or that they hate maths and that they can't do it. More often than not, this is usually not the case because the maths in the UCAT tends to be pretty easy, usually at around a 15 to 16-year-old level, and often you can learn how to do this maths fairly easy if you get over that fear of just trying to do maths. Try and bring it into your mind that the maths you need to do in the UCAT is actually quite easy, and with practice 100% anyone can get it, regardless of how good you think you are at maths. Following on from this, my second tip is to try and practice all of the mathematical tests and equations that you might need in the UCAT. For example, these are things like percentage change, ratios, distance, speed, time questions, using basic equations, calculating averages, and things like that that are very easy to practice on your own. I'd recommend practicing each of these individually and understanding exactly why you need to do certain bits of calculations for the things that you're doing so that you build up a strong understanding rather than just regurgitating what you think you need to know. Something that can be useful here is to take a maths textbook that you might have used when you were 15 or 16 and just looking through these topics in these questions and just doing a ton of questions on every single topic. You might use this information to figure out what topics you're particularly bad at, and then you can target your revision to those so that you can actually improve over time. My third tip is to get used to using the calculator. The calculator in the UCAT isn't particularly good or useful, and you often can't do simple things like BODMAS on it because of the way that the calculator works. As a result, make sure you get really familiar with the specific calculator software that's used on the UCAT, and also practice typing really quickly using a number pad because that's what you'll have on the test day. For example, something that I used was MedEntry's number pad speed typing drill, which helped me type in numbers much faster into the calculator and with a higher degree of accuracy as well. My fourth tip though is to not over-rely on the calculator. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of mental maths in the QR section because often it will help you get the answer or just realize what the answer is way faster than if you did all of the calculations on the calculator. My next tip is to write down these numbers called checkpoint numbers onto your noteboard. These are numbers that you might get in your calculations that you might need for later questions or you might need later on in the same question. Again, because of the limitations of the calculator, you might not be able to do a question in a nice stream of calculations like you usually would on a normal calculator. As a result, it's nice to write down important numbers such as averages or sums that you get in your calculations that you can look at later on when you're doing the question or in later questions when you might need those numbers later on. My final tip is to watch out for tricks in question. You're doing the question. To write down important numbers such as averages or sums that you get in your calculations that you can look at later on when you're doing the question or in later questions when you might need those numbers later on. My final tip is to watch out for tricks in questions. The UCAT question writers are always very sneaky and they always put in things like changes of units, little qualifying phrases in the questions that means that a certain answer might not be right, and overall it's just really easy to get tricked in the QR subtest. Get used to reading these stimuluses very, very carefully so that you can see whatever tricks might be coming up, avoiding them and getting the question right in the end. Before I move on to showing you my calculated tricks, I'd like to thank MedEntry for sponsoring this series. MedEntry is the preparation platform that I used when I was preparing for the UCAT, and I find that they have the questions that are most similar to the actual test. They've just launched their new LMS platform, which I personally think looks amazing, and it has skills trainers and interactive curriculum, thousands of questions for you to use to practice, and subscriptions. Okay, so I've got the MedEntry question bank up on the screen here, and the first thing that I'll do is I'll show you guys how I use the calculator and what important shortcuts you might need to know in case you want to use the calculator more effectively. So the very first
do 25 plus 50 plus 40 divided by 3. So then Q, which is 35, 40, 50.
Most basic thing to do when practicing for the QR subtest is actually just get a keyboard that has a number pad, so this region here. So it's really important to use a number pad when you're practicing because on the actual UCAT you will have a number pad, and in general for most people it's just a way faster method of typing and inputting numbers. So the very first, so this region here. So to do when practicing for the QR subtest is to actually just get a keyboard that has a number pad, so this region here. So it's really important to use a number pad when you're practicing because on the actual UCAT you will have a number pad, and in general for most people it's just a way faster method of typing and inputting numbers into the calculator. To actually bring up the on-screen calculator, you don't have to press this calculator button up here. What you can do is you can press Alt plus C and that will bring up the calculator. Then just know you can move the calculator around as a window by dragging this around. Then as normal you can just type in numbers into the calculator and get your answers, whatever you need, doing that. One small trick I have that I found was very useful when using the calculator is that when you have a number in your calculation, for example, and you have this number here, 171, and say you want to clear the calculator without having to press the back button, instead what you can do is you can do 0 equals 0, and then that will also clear the calculator as is, without you having to move your hand to press the escape or back button on the keyboard. The other thing to note is that when you move between questions, the calculator disappears, but then all you have to do is just press Alt+C to bring it up again, and the calculator will be in the same position that you had it before. The last somewhat useful function that I'll show you on the calculator is the memory function, and those are these three buttons here, so the MRC button, M- button, and M+ button. So this is useful when you're doing calculations that might require you to add something to a certain number repeatedly. So the way this works is that there is a memory function on this calculator. So what happens is, say you got a number, for example, 500 in your calculations. The way memory works is that you have to press M+, and then you'll see that this M icon comes up on the calculator, and this means that the 500 has been added to the memory. So then what you can do is, if you clear the calculator and then you press MRC, you'll see that 500 comes back up, which means that the memory has been recalled, MRC. The memory function can be useful sometimes, but in general I find that it's generally not that useful. But the way now that you can utilize this is, since you have 500 in the memory, say in the next part of the question you got the number 60 and you required to add that into 500, instead of having to press plus 500, which is easy in this case, but it could have been difficult, like a different number that's hard to memorize, instead what you can do is you can say 60 M+, and if you just stop there, you clear the calculator and you press memory recall, you realize that it has been added to the memory, and that is the way that you can use the memory function. And so it also works the other way. So say you had 560 that came up in your calculations, and you wanted to minus 80 from that number. Type in 80, or you do your calculations, and you do M-, and you'll see that when you clear the calculator and you press memory recall, you get 480, which was
That's why I was getting so confused, bro. That's why I was getting so confused. Let me pull up the quantitative reasoning. Let's just this. Let's just do this. Right. What am I 2 candles for a month state? Is a different size. Okay, so I would do Alt-C. Right, 8, 12, 22, 24, 32, 40. So we got 40. This is the way I have to think 40 times 0.5. 6. 18, 20, 32, 42, 50. And 4. That's 19, okay. 12, 22, 24, 32, 40. 40 centimeters. 40 divided by 0.15. 66666. I want to store that. No. I'm going to store that, right? 18, 20, 30, 32, 37, 50, 50, 0.2, 250. Take away that equals cents. Ah, he's right. I don't find this useful at all. So you got 266.6666, right? We're gonna store that. That's the value, right? That's the value, right? Now, for this, we got 50. 50 divided by 0.2, we got 250. The stored value. So you got stored value. Do that, take away that, 16.6. if you remember candle A, it was 26666 divided by 60. Right, I might have to skip this. This is such a dead question. Eight, that's 32. So what I would do then, I do 32 divided by 0.15 to 115. 4 p.m. divided by 60. No, I do times 6 again. 21333. Okay. Whereas they're both the same. 8 divided by 0.15. 53. 8 divided by 0.2. This is 53. This ends at 53. This ends at 50. 3 minutes. Radius. Okay, so this, we know this ends in 2. It's definitely not, can't tell. Minutes, right? No, yeah, this is what the whiteboard's for. I don't know why I'm not using the whiteboard. Okay, so then we use the whiteboard. I don't really know how to convert minutes into that and that. So yeah, again, we got 40. That's how many minutes it will take, right? Divided by 60. 2/3. Wait, no, that's not even 2/3. Okay, so we got 4 hours, then we got 0.4444 times 60, 27 minutes. Okay, so that's 10, that's 12:57, right? What time does she need to land candle B? But if this is 50 divided by 0.2, 250. I already know this is 4 hours and 10 minutes. We did divide by 4 times by 4. We divide by 60. We get 0.1666. Yeah, we get 10 minutes. So we get 4 hours, 10 minutes for that one. So we have to be at 47. That's a very easy question, I don't know. What I should have done for this question, right? Because it starts, I should have realized, right? Because it starts on a 0. I just find the difference. It doesn't make sense because I haven't even got that many questions wrong. Oh, it's probably because of the mock test I did after.
Is 560 minus 80. So in very niche cases, this memory function can be useful, but I tend to not use it in general because it's a bit cumbersome to press the buttons, and there can be like these shortcuts that you can use, but they're in general not that good to use in most cases. Okay, so now we'll do this question that's been up on the screen for a while now. So the first thing that I'll do when seeing a question is I'll just read the stimulus. So the paper production in millions of tons for 3 companies P, Q, and R for 5 consecutive years are shown in the graph below. And then I'll just read quantity in million tons, the axes, what is the ratio of the average production of company P in the period 2016 to 18 to the average company production of company Q in the same period. So then what I'll have a look at is I think to myself, okay, what are the calculations that I'll need to do in order to get the answer to this question? So what I realize is that what I'm looking at are these 3 years, so 2016 to 2018, I'm looking at P, which is the darkest one here, and then I'm also looking at Q, which is the middle one here, on all 3 years. Then I know what I'll have to do is I'll have to add up, I'll have to find the average of P for those 3 years, and I have to find the average of Q for those 3 years, and I'd have to write down those numbers and compare them to find the ratio. So in my head, once I've read this question, I already know exactly what calculations I have to do to find the answer. And when you get better and better at this, you'll start just doing the calculations as you think of them to speed up the whole process. The reason why it's important to think about what calculations you have to do is because this question might have asked me to do a whole lot more calculations than what it currently has. But if that was the case, then I would know to skip this question and do it later on when maybe I had a little bit more time. So now I'll just get started with the calculations required. So what I know is that I need to do 2016, 2017, 2018, the average of those for P. So I've got 25 plus 50 plus 40 gives me 115, divided by 3, gives me 38.33. What I'll do is I would write this down because this is what we'd call a checkpoint number, and it's something that I'll need to know for later on in other questions. Then I just need to calculate the ratio for Q. So I've got 35 plus 40 plus 50. Do that, divide by 3, gives me 41.666. So 41.6. And now what I'll do is I'll just do this divided by 38.3 to get whatever ratio I need. And then that will be whatever this is. Then I'll multiply this by 15 to see if that makes a whole number. It doesn't, then I'll divide it by 15. I'll multiply by 23, see if that gives a whole number. Yes, it does. It gives me 25, so the answer must be C. So what I've done there is I found the average of company P over these 3 years, and then I found the average of company Q over those 3 years. Then I divided the average of company Q by the average of company P to find exactly how much company Q would produce for every 1 million tons that company P produced. Then what I did is I went through a process of elimination. So I multiplied that by 15, and I saw that it wasn't 17, so that could not be the answer. Then I multiplied it by 3, and I found that it was in fact 25, so that was the answer. What I've realized now in doing the question in hindsight is that I actually didn't even need to find the average of all of these numbers because the average didn't actually matter because it was over the same period of time. So I could have just gotten the ratio of the amount that those companies each produced in those 3 years and used those numbers to find the ratios as well. This is good for me.
Oh, just found the ratio, so we could just done 25 to 35. Okay, let's see if that works. He could have done 25 to 35, 50 to 40, and 40 to 50. You've got 35 on 15. Probably end up being the same, I can't lie. I don't think it would have led to anything special. Who did this get 75, 125, 125, 75, 115. So if you divide that by 5, you get 25. 115 divided by 5, 24. Yeah! I suppose so.
I realize in review because then I can think of, okay, the next time I get asked a question that's like this, I know that I don't actually need to waste my time calculating the average. I can just add up the numbers in total and that should give me the right answer. So now looking at this next question, I see in which year was the production of company R as a percentage of the production of company Q the maximum? So basically what this is asking is when was
So it'd be 16 or 40, and then here you do 45 over 35, 28, and then you do 35 over 25, so you'd say 2014.
company R, when did company R produce as much or more paper than company Q? I see that there's only 2 years, 2014 and 2016, where company R had more than company Q. So then I know that B, D, and E all cannot be right. Now what I'll just do is I'll just calculate the percentage over in 2014 and the percentage over in 2016, see which one is bigger, and that will be the answer. So what I'll do here is 35 divided by 25, that will give me 1.4, I would write that down. Then I've got 2016, which is 45 divided by 35, which is 1.28, so therefore I know 2014 must be the answer. So here we've basically got a repeat of the first question, and now since I've got the experience of the first question, I know that all I need to do is just add these up and then get the ratio of that to the ratio of this number. these numbers added up here in 2016. So that's what
30, 55, 60, 90. So it goes 90 to 25, 30, 60, 115, 90 to 115, to 115, to 90. Six, no, 7. Oh, no, actually, no.
do. I'll do 30 plus 25 plus 35, gives me 90. I'll write that down. Then I've got 2016, which will be 25 plus 35 plus 45. And that gives me 105. So I know the ratio is 90 to 105. Therefore, what I'll do is I'll just find, okay, most of these numbers are 6 or 5. What I can do is I'll just divide this by 90, get that, then I can multiply this by 6. See what I get? It's 6 to 7, that's going to be C. Now we've got a percentage increase question, which said, what is the percentage increase in production of company Q from 2014 to 2017? So I've got company Q, which is the middle one, 25 in 2014 to 40 in 2017. So the way I'll do these percentage change questions is I'll just say, okay, 40 minus 25, which gives me 15, and I'll divide that, which is the change, by the original number, which was 25, which gives me 60% increase. So since those questions are done now, we'll have a look at the answers and see how we went. So as you can see, we got all of those questions right, which is really good to see. Okay, so here we've got another question set that has a table that shows the number of laptop computers and tablet devices sold by 6 tech companies over the past year. Then they tell you in the notes, the following year there'll be a 12.5 decrease in tablet sales across all 6 companies listed. And then the question is, what is the difference between the average number of devices, both laptops and tablets, sold by FastLap, and the average number of devices sold by Tiger Tech? So now I'm reading the table really quickly. I see there's company, laptops, and tablets. No, all I need to do is add these up, set the average, and then FastLap set the average. So what I'll do is just do that in the calculator. Pretty easy question. Got 2120 plus 2980, because that divide by 2, 2550. So I might write this in the calculator, or what I can do is I can add this to memory like that. Then what I can do is I'll find FastLap, 8332 plus 2454, do that, divide this by 2, get the average, and then what I can do is, since it's looking for the difference, what I might do is minus this from memory, cancel, then I'll just say memory recall, I see it's 2843, which is E. So what I did there is I first calculated the average of Tiger Tech, then I calculated the average of FastLap, and then I minus the average for FastLap from the average of Tiger Tech. It gave me a negative number, but it doesn't matter because the difference is going to be the same always. So this question is asking me how many more total sales are made by the company with the highest overall laptop sales compared to its closest competitor in that year, and it's expressed as a percentage of the higher amount. So I see that the highest number of laptop sales is D-Techno, and just eyeballing the data, the next top one is going to be Zontechno. So what I'll do is I'll just add these together. So I've got D-Techno, which is 35, 35,
Oh, he's done it wrong. It's overall laptop. It's D-Techno to Microsoft Tech. So wait, how many more total sales made by company?
Seven plus 1568, so I made a mistake. 35587 plus 1568, 37155. Then I'm going to do Zontechno, and I would have written that down. They've got 66558, 6558 plus 25298. It's going to be 31856. So 31856. And I'm going to do minus 37155, gives me that, divided by 37155, which gives me 14.26%, which is just A. So the next question The expected total sales of laptops and tablets for Michelson Tech is the following year is 10,845. What's the approximate ratio of laptops sold in the past year to laptops expected to sell in the following year for this company? So, tell you that the following year there'll be a 12.5 decrease in tablet sales across all 6 companies. So then I know in Michelson Tech this will decrease by 12.5, which is 0.875, which is just 1 minus 12, 0.21125. I got 622. Then I can do, okay, total sales is going to be that much there, 10,845. So do that minus 10,845 gives me 4,622. Then what I'll do is I'll divide, okay, the approximate ratio of laptops sold in the past year to laptops expected to sell in the following year. So this, what I'm going to do is I'll do 13,000. So this divided by 13,588. I made a mistake. I'll just do it approximately. Multiply this by 7, gives me around 2. So it can't be 7. I'll do that. Multiply by 4, gives me about 1. Then divide by 4. Multiply by 3, gives me about 1. So I know it's going to be around 3 to 1 E. So I actually made a little mistake in my calculator there, but I didn't worry about it and I just continued on because I knew that it would be more important for me to finish the question quickly rather than just trying to get it perfectly right. And I think I got the answer overall right anyway. So the next question asks, if DTechNo wish to keep their total sales of both
So what we would do 280 multiplied by 0.875, 26 left. That's how much it will decrease by. So we will get this amount, right? Put that in the calculator. And let me drag the calculator over here, right? Okay. Oh, we can't have both open at the same time. For whatever reason, Apple decided that to be. So this is new. This is the new. This is the new laptop, new tablet sales, right? Divide, take away 2,980. Because they want to increase their tablets by that. So we want to multiply this by -1 plus I've been doing it for the wrong company. Okay, so what you do 1560 times 0.125 give you 195. They have to make up from that. 195
laptops and tablets at the same total figure the following year, what must the percentage increase in laptop sales be? So what that means is if DTechNo was to sell the total number of the same total number of products, how much would the number of laptops have to increase, considering that 12.4?
I did the thing was 1568, right? So 1568, so we go 1568 times by 0.25 196, 196. 196 over 35. Yeah.
5% decrease from tablets. So what I'll do is I'll do 8, 6, so 6, 8, that's the number of tablets, multiply that by 0.875, which gives me that much, minus this from 1568. So that's the amount that the number of tablets decreased in the following year. So I know then the number of laptops must increase by 196. So then I'm just calculating 196 as a percentage of 35,587. So divide by 35,587, which is that, multiply by 100 to get the percentage, which is 0.5507, which is B. Okay, so as you can see, we got all 4 of these questions right again. And there you can see why it's important to not lose your composure if you make a mistake in the calculator, and just to keep on going, because often you'll get the right answer just through estimating, especially in this question here. Hopefully you've now got a good idea of how I go about answering these questions. And if you enjoyed this video, check out this one where I go through the decision-making subtest, or check out this playlist for all of my UCAT videos.
Drink up and drunk. What? That means I don't know. I literally don't want to eat any eggs, man. I feel like I might be sick. Very curious, yeah. What is using the colouring? It's kind of weird. But it doesn't have any colouring, but it's such a rich colour. Was I do understand the thinking here? I mean, okay. Look at the mock exams. Just 8, 16. 8, 16, 22, 27. I do 2 a day will be done by like someone September. I'm actually gonna look at the final like theme above because okay. I mean, only 22 minutes. It's kind of weird. So it's got the most questions as well. It's got the most questions. Mm. Okay, go. I ain't doing that. Can experience a rapid descent. this amount. doesn't say, it just says. Oh damn, this is short. What I scan? Any points? Alright, if it's too big, alright, if it's very big and I don't know, if it's big and I don't know, I'll answer flag. If it's short, so I'm just telling my friends. So this is where people go wrong, yeah. They do good. Then they're like, I don't need to do it again. I don't need to do it again. I need to do it again because I'm shit. Okay, so I'm gonna have to. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have. I'm gonna see how I do. Okay. And then you'll actually be cooked, and I may be able to cook. Which is a hard time in the morning. Sometimes. I am improving. Hold on, I'm gonna just put on my dressing gown because it is getting a bit chilly. And I didn't realize that I actually started the I didn't realize I actually started the thing. Obviously, we're gonna undo that. Cancel mark, we're not gonna and when I get the keyboard, maybe we'll check that after I'm done. When we get the keyboard, we'll actually get a real test of that. Mhm. too long. We're gonna see. Why Control C flag, flag C next, C flag next, C flag next, C flag next, C flag next. Okay, once passage, a contract. Fix that one. I'm doing a test. I'm doing a test. convention, self-determination theory prison. Oh, I wasn't really say all types of motivation. False. Yeah, in control masters. Yeah, I'd say that's true. Okay, I go for this one. Let's go, man.
I'm actually gassed. Shit, I forgot to end the stream. Bro, I got so excited I forgot to stop recording. Forgot to stop recording.